What flaw do you accept about your significant other that would be a deal breaker for many? Story 1. His intense secrecy. He doesn't even keep things secret on purpose. He just doesn't mention things as a default, and the result is very, very weird. His whole family is like this, freakishly unwilling to talk about themselves. He is so secretive that I found out after 7 years together that he has 2 brothers, not one. Nothing scandalous or anything at all. They talk on the phone once every few months. Months? And when I emailed his brother, he wrote back right away to say hi. Seems like a nice, normal dude. But I guess since he lives in New Zealand, he doesn't come to family gatherings, so I haven't met him. This is par for the course. I found out about a grad degree when we ran into one of his profs at a burrito palace. When I asked why he never mentioned his brother, he just said that he would have if asked. I don't know that how many brothers do you have is a question you should have to ask, but apparently, to be honest, the same. Found out he was a qualified scuba instructor 3 years after being married, finding new stuff about him all the time. To be fair, though, we only found out last year he has autism, so it made more sense that he will only answer direct questions. Never thought to ask that one, though. He's not deliberately secretive, just doesn't occur to him to share spontaneously. He's the most loyal person I've ever met, so I never worry. If you don't mind me asking, how did you find out he has autism? We had our son. He just stopped coping, couldn't process anything well. Was having a kid stressful anyway, but it meant he couldn't mask how overwhelmed life got for him sometimes. Having a kid just brought that out. Our boy was very sick for the first few months of his life, too. I Googled all the things I was seeing in him, lent towards Asperger's type behavior. So we set up a meeting with a clinical psychologist for testing, and within the hour, he had his diagnosis. He had coped so well in life up to that point to be able to hide how overwhelming life was for him that not one person had thought anything was up. He's been able to admit how hard he finds life now, and I can help him by taking the weight off a bit. It's a good thing. Hope that helps. Wow. This is the actual embodiment of that running gag you see in TV shows and everything is, how come you didn't say anything about that? You didn't ask. This is like the living embodiment of that. And it was interesting that it takes a person having a kid to sort of tip them over the edge. And very good on this person for getting them the help that they needed. Wow. Story 2. This was inspired by reading posts over on the relationship forum, where the response is always, everything is a sign that they're secretly an abuser and will never change. Break up with him now. I'm curious about the things people overlook, because the relationship is otherwise good, or you're working in the relationship to fix the problems. What a crazy concept that you can work on things instead of assuming you just aren't compatible and breaking up. I put up with the fact that my girlfriend is lazy and bad at communicating, because she's really bad at explaining things. We're working on her being more responsible and me being more patient when trying to figure out what she's saying. I'm trying to ask her more questions instead of assuming my interpretation of her poor wording. My girlfriend is also putting up with my mental health issues, and we're working on them together instead of her assuming that I'm an irreparable Hitler and leaving me, because I went off meds for a while and acted like a shrew. Don't worry, back on meds. But if you'll notice, not very many of the responses to your post are he or she deliberately hit me during a fight and then cried and apologized the next day. Shockingly, the advice here is not to stick around to see if they'll do it again. Weird. He or she coerces me into spicy time, and I feel awful afterwards, almost like I was coerced. I take medication to fall asleep, which puts me out, and I woke up once to my significant other fingering me, thought I was dreaming, and they told me to go back to sleep, and then found out they took a video and posted it on a porn site. My significant other calls me ugly and a stupid shrew when we argue, and my personal favorite, my wife keeps double knotting my work boots. I'm a volunteer EMT, and I've asked her not to repeatedly, and she laughed when I told her my contributions are important and I need to be able to put on my shoes as fast as possible. I lost my temper once, and the next day she said she was afraid I was going to hit her, which I've never done. One night, I unlaced her running shoes, and she woke me up crying and yelling at me that I hurt her, and why would I do something so inconsiderate? Whereas these are inspired by, I only took liberties in tone, double check for yourself, actual posts on relationship advice. Trust me, I desperately want to believe they're fake and everything is made of sunshine and rainbows, yet sometimes that isn't the case. It's really hard to be in a relationship and kind of wonder if some of these signals that you're seeing or these situations that are seeing are abuse or if they're going to lead to abuse. And it just almost seems like you have to actually get hurt just once to actually have the confirmation in order to leave. Either that or people will accuse you of being paranoid if you try to get out of there with these situations before it happens. It doesn't always seem cut and dried. Have you ever been in a situation where your signals about a person turned out to be true? Story 3. He has a lot of sensory issues. Examples. If you repeat the same word or phrase a few times in a row, he'll flinch. It's like it literally zaps his brain. Sometimes his skin is extra sensitive in a bad way, and so he can't hug or cuddle even though he really loves cuddling. He calls these sensory storms. He has to have socks on at literally all times aside from when he's in the shower. His feet are extremely ticklish in a bad way, and the socks block things, even breezes from a fan from touching his feet. Sometimes he can't sleep in the same bed because of the above-mentioned sensory storm issue. If he brushes up against my body at those times, it feels physically painful or uncomfortable. He has to engage in a variety of twitches. You wouldn't notice them just by looking at him, but if you're cuddling him, you can feel them. Sometimes he just feels too hot for no reason. And at those times, he also can't be touched too much. Some of these issues are only present a minority of the time. But when they are present, some of them can be annoying. But he's more annoyed by them than I am, since he's frustrated with his own body and neurology at such times. Whereas for me, it's more like I just feel sorry that he's comfortable. Weird connection here, but Howard Hughes owned RKO Film Studio and was a record-breaking pilot, had a similar affliction as he aged. He wouldn't or couldn't cut his hair or toenails because it was excruciating, and he couldn't wear clothes when it got really bad because it would hurt him. I did a project on him in elementary school. They think he might have had allodynia, which causes pain where normally there wouldn't be any. I'm autistic and my boyfriend has ADHD. We both suffer from sensory issues that affect us in different ways. He struggles with a lot of sounds. Some make him nauseous, others hurt his ears, and some give him anxiety. For me, I have issues with textures and get complete sensory overload every now and then. It doesn't cause too many problems, thankfully. The only issue is that if I like my texture, I'll rub my hands over and over again, and sometimes it's a bad sound which causes my boyfriend to have to leave the room until I stop. I've heard about sounds getting too loud and sensitive, or eyes, or like some sort of flashing becoming too sensitive for your eyes. I've never really stopped to think about Some people just having too sensitive a skin or too sensitive to the touch, so much that it affects your brain. Have you ever had anything like this happen to you at all? Story 4. She's not very good at spicy time. I love her, and marriage isn't all about spicy time. She had an eating disorder, bulimia, most of her life, and just kind of freezes up when we're intimate. We have 3 gorgeous and healthy kids after losing 4 and wondering if we would ever have any. We have a good life, just not good spicy time. That's a tough one, mate. Intimacy is about the most vulnerable a person is, and somebody with body issues as significant as hers are a bad combo. Best you can do is reinforce how intimately attractive she is, over and over and over and over. Drill it into her head how hot she is. Intimacy is 80% confidence, so if you just attack her confidence with love, then it'll help. As someone who used to freeze and has opened up intimately since I first met my spouse, it wasn't about being told how hot I was. That sort of thing was completely well-intentioned, but my head heard it as, "I really want to stick my tool in you," which didn't help the portion of the problem that had more to do with me than him. What helped more was hearing that no matter what I looked like in a given moment, he was still interested in us being together and close and touching one another. And not just intimately, but cuddling and kissing and hugging and all the other schmaltzy stuff. It turns out what I was stressing about had less to do with my appearance and more to do with my internal confidence and comfort with myself as a person worthy of being loved. You and my husband are in the same boat. We've been married 6.5 years, have 2 healthy kids, have lost 2, and are currently incubating 1. I am not good at intimacy. We have fought, cried, and struggled to develop a healthy, spicy life. It's not easy. We have a long way to go, but we haven't given up. Ultimately, we both recognize the need for a healthy, intimate life, and we work really hard to help each other out. I hope someday it becomes more natural to me, but until then, my husband is a trooper. Hoping the same thing for the 2 of you. Story 5. I don't know if mental illness is a flaw per se, but I assume that intense chronic depression would generally be a deal breaker for most. He's truly a loving person, and when he's happy, it's like the sun comes out. One of my goals is to eventually get him to understand what I see in him. We both know that I'm not his therapist. That's not what's going on. Everything's been awful these past few months for a variety of reasons, but I keep holding out hope that it'll get better. Even in the time I've known him, he's made some pretty significant improvements. I don't know you, but if a compliment from a stranger means anything, here it comes. What you're doing sounds amazing, and you should be proud of yourself. Keep it up. You're a saint. I've been depressed my whole adult life, and I don't know how to break it. I just deal with it. I've never been in a relationship because I'm broken inside. You've given me a little hope. Thank you. This really hits home for me because my girlfriend is the same way. She was doing so well. And then all this stuff with COVID hit and ruined her routines, and it's really affected her mentally. And when she's happy and has a routine, she is the best person in the world. Extremely good heart and great vibes. But when the routine stopped, she got into this really dark place, and I'm slightly concerned for her, being that she won't be able to find a routine for her to get back into. We don't live together yet, so most of our conversations are through text, and when we aren't physically together, she's very distant and texting me very little. And I try to get her out of her house as much as I can, but any time that she isn't the one who wants to get out of the house and see me, she doesn't seem like she's here. I'm really just waiting till she can get herself into some sort of routine again, and hopefully she'll get back to where she was. Taking it one day at a time. Story 6. I don't know about accept, but my significant other is not as attracted to me as he used to be or as I need him to be. I'm trying to work on myself first before I decide I can't deal with it anymore, but it sucks pretty hard. I miss being wanted. Definitely a deal breaker. I gained some weight dealing with a difficult ex, getting sick, endometriosis sucks, and losing my job. Being fired because you're sick sucks. And even though I was struggling and not as hot as before, my man tells me how attractive and beautiful I am all the time. I'm sure he'd enjoy it if I trimmed down a bit, working on it, but I know it's something that I'm driving, and I have no sense that he expects it. That's what you want. Trust me. He tells all kinds of things. I just don't turn him on like I used to. I'm 10 years into this relationship, and we have a family, and we love each other endlessly. If I was younger or in a different place, I would consider settling, but he treats me better than anyone has before, and we have so much other stuff that makes our relationship great. Nobody gets everything. Thanks for the nice message, though. It's sweet that you're pushing for happiness and fulfillment. I didn't mean to imply that I'm unhappy. It's just a little thing that isn't perfect, but it's vastly outweighed by so much good. Hang on. She never said he doesn't tell me I'm attractive anymore. She just said that she knows he's not as attracted anymore. For all we know, he does tell her she's beautiful still, even if it's not true, as a good partner should. Always be supportive through the hard times. Do you think you can blame media for this? It always seems like in romantic comedies or even dramas, it seems like a lot of affairs or rumors of affairs happen when one person just says, well, you just don't look at me the way you used to anymore. And here it has a very nuanced look at this type of issue and how they're dealing with it. And they do deal with it. Has anything like this ever happened to you? Let me know. Story 6. Both of us prefer to spend all of our time together. It's not a codependent, dysfunctional thing because neither of us gets upset or stressed out if we can't. But we're happiest in each other's company, and given a choice, we'd always choose to be together. The whole pandemic situation hasn't been a problem for us because it's actually allowed us to be together more, as is our preference. However, I understand this doesn't work out for most people, but it's always worked for us. My significant other and I are the same. Quarantine has sucked since we don't live together and are quarantining separately. My husband and I are like that. We aren't distressed when apart and have traveled without each other for various reasons, and it's fine. But his company is so nice that it always enhances anything. He seems to feel the same. My boyfriend's family refers to us as twins sometimes because we're like that too. I need huge amounts of alone time even around my friends, but with him, it's different. It's a little hard for me to understand why some couples fight so much when they spend all their time together.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 8. She's a compulsive liar and was raised by one. This would be a huge red flag for most people, but her tells are pretty obvious and she's consciously been trying hard not to lie at all. In my experience, a lot of compulsive liars are that way because their parents were abusive. Abused children become excellent manipulators and talented liars because those are the only two survival tools available. When your entire childhood is stuck maneuvering between different states of anxiety, fear, and paranoia, lying not only becomes easy, it also becomes necessary. Problem is that many abused kids grow up and then apply this perspective to everyone. I mean, if their own parents would treat them this way, strangers must be even worse. Having said that, I'm glad you seem to have a level head about your significant other, and she seems to be making an effort to correct her behavior. Oh my gosh, this is me. I lie for no reason except it's a habit. I will lie about going to the grocery store when I was really at the laundromat, for no reason. And I come from an abusive home, but I never put that together. I'm so embarrassed about doing this that I don't know how to ask for help. Have you tried therapy? I can see why you'd be embarrassed, but there's a 0% chance that you'd be the weirdest person the therapist has ever seen, with the worst behavior the therapist has ever seen. They aren't going to judge you the way a typical person would. Well, there are a few jerkwad therapists, but most of them are okay. Story 9. Smoking cigs. Same. I've never smoked, but when I met my now husband, he was a smoker. I never expected us to be more than a brief fling, so I didn't mind at the time. Then we got serious and lived together, and he only smoked outside. So apart from his coat, the smell never really made it into the house. I never tried to get him to quit, since I figured he'd do it if he really wanted to. 6 years into our relationship, he quit cigarettes for vaping, and after a year of vaping, he quit that too. Now he doesn't smoke anything at all. He's my favorite person, and he's such a good partner and friend. I see so many people talk about how disgusting cigarette mouth or breath is, but I never thought it was gross. He doesn't have gum disease or anything. I would have missed out on such a healthy, perfect relationship if I'd been one of those people to be all like, ew, cigarettes, gross, you're bad. I had an ex who only ever smoked after intimacy. After that, the smell of cigarettes is actually kind of a turn-on. Another ex after that would apologize every time she smoked, and I was happy to say, nah, I like it. Give me a kiss, and see the relief on her face. Story 10. He talks a lot. He rambles about everything possible, from the origin of salty licorice to why there are so many irregular verbs in French, to his old work experiences, to the most minute historical or mythological facts. Sometimes he'll laugh when I'm working. I'll go, and he'll talk for 5 minutes straight about some obscure fact he just learned. I love his enthusiasm. I genuinely like his little rants as signs of his boundless intellectual curiosity. I always learn something, too, and we'll never run out of things to talk about. And besides, I talk a lot, too, so we're well matched. I'm him. I literally got told in high school that I'm the person people would go to when bored because I always had weird facts and rambles that kept people entertained. I had very few real friends because while it was interesting when you were bored, I became annoying very fast. That's actually so sweet. He sounds like an amazing person to talk to. He really is. I love him a whole bunch. I've never felt so comfortable with someone before. He makes me incredibly happy. Story 11. My husband also has analysis paralysis. Takes him a long time to decide on anything. I really like your take on it. Previously, I accepted it as part of who he is. Now that I've read you viewing it as being invested, I'll be able to approach things differently. Thank you, online stranger. I do that a bit too, and also know I tend to frustrate people when I reply, I don't care. Usually when I do that, it's either because I know it would take me a while to work out which one I really want, so to spare both of us some time, I'll let them make the decision. The other option is, I just truly don't have a preference and leave it up to the other person if they have a slight preference. Happened a lot as a kid when my parents would ask me what shape of pasta I wanted. I didn't care enough to formulate an opinion and got many a lecture about indecisiveness. For what it's worth, sometimes the other person might not care too, but a decision needs to be made, and it's not fair to always make someone else choose. I don't know you or what kind of situations you're talking about, so no judgment, but sometimes keep that in mind. Story 12. With my man, he needs time to think about serious subjects or even minor decisions sometimes, so you can't expect him to give an answer right away. It can be really frustrating, especially when you kind of need an answer right away. I've come to think of it as him being very invested in even the little things in our lives because he cares so much, because this is how his brain works. I try to give him lead time, or if a decision needs to be made right away, I offer to be the one to make the call, which takes it off his plate altogether. He accommodates my anxieties and quirks, so it's definitely not a one-way street. Story 13. When she gets stressed, she screams. It is horrible. I learned how her mother treated her and understood it a lot more. She already went to therapy once she realized how much it troubles me. That says a lot about her character. She saw a problem and she's working on it. Now when she gets stressed and raises her voice, she knows I'll just leave the house. I mean, no disrespect, just leaving until she calms down. At first, I read when she gets dressed and I was very confused. I did the exact same thing. Same, very confused. Story 14. I suppose the distance, geographic, or her depression. But man, when she's happy, it's the greatest. Depression is such an innocent word, people don't immediately consider a deal breaker. But let me tell you, it changes a relationship more than one might think. I put up with the irregular sleeping times, the chores, and the responsibility when it comes down to the wire. But if you just gotta know a depressed person and think about getting together for both of your sakes, Try to understand the effects of that illness before you might need to leave due to it. Story 15. Honestly, I think my boyfriend is pretty accepting about my deity-awful snoring. I never thought to record it, but the impressions he does are not flattering. Have you gotten yourself checked for sleep apnea? If not, please do. My CPAP machine changed my life. I feel so much better. It's a horrible marital nightmare. I'm an awful snorer, and I've done so much to reduce it, but nothing has worked. I feel so bad for my wife having to put up with me. She's got noise-blocking headphones that work somewhat. Story 16. He leaves a few chips in the bag and puts it back in the cupboard. Honestly, I still might have to leave. My partner does this too, saying, "I wanted you to have the last bite." He thinks he's being sweet and was confused at first when I was annoyed with him. Ugh, my whole family does that. If I had a nickel for every time I pulled a condiment out of the fridge only to find a quarter teaspoon of whatever, I'd have enough to pay for my legal defense after I unalive them all. Story 17. She doesn't cook. Doesn't bother me since I love cooking and worked in catering for many years, but might be a deal breaker for some. My boyfriend doesn't cook, and 4 days ago was the first time I ever saw him ingest produce in a year and a half. Poor nutrition is a person's prerogative, but I wish I could cook more things for both of us. What did he eat for a year and a half? Carbs, meat, dairy? Thank the heavens he takes vitamins. Story 18. Asexuality. My wife has basically turned asexual over the past 5 years. Went from active spicy life to basically zero. Her intimacy drive just vanished. Nobody we've seen about it has been any help, so we've just adjusted to our new reality. Oof. Yeah, that would be a tough one, in my opinion. That would be a deal breaker for me. Story 19. She's vegan. A lot of guys would have a problem with that. I get used to it. She doesn't force it on me, but she cooks most of the meals, so that's what I mostly eat. I don't like to cook. We go out to restaurants sometimes, and that's when I'll get a burger or something, with cheese. In the end, I do notice that I feel better when I eat vegan. Can't give up cheese, though. Story 20. They don't fully close the tops on jars. How do you tolerate this madness? Stop lifting them by the lid. Don't put the lid on. Story 21. He wore a fedora in one of his senior high school photos. More like a deal maker, what the hell? I was worried for a second. I miss the days before fedora meant neckbeard. Story 22. His stupid dad jokes. All dad jokes are stupid. It's kind of a requirement. What did the mayonnaise say to the refrigerator? What? Story 23. She won't let me do her nails or even brush her hair. It's a good thing her hair is short, but I have to dose her or haul her to the vet for a claw trim. You got me in the first half, not gonna lie.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.